Oh yeah, it's all coming together. I just saw a GIF on my Twitter feed reminding me that The Emperor's New Groove is one of my favorite animated films ever, really. And it's mainly because I grew up with it. That a little bit of nostalgia and timely, time, timeless comedies. What I'm trying to say. I don't know. There's something about the comedic nature of Emperor's New Groove that just really gels with me completely. I don't know. Like it has a sense of humor that's just different from any other animated Disney film within that time period. I was like, wow, this is different. So it caught me off by surprise, and I loved it ever since. Anyways, that about does it. David here with episode 3 of Film Student School. It is Thursday night. I'm starting just a little bit on the earlier side. Generally, I wait until 7:30 or about 5 minutes early or so, but I am actually rather hungry, so I want to be able to get some food in me and also get some stuff done because I'm a little bit behind on my own assignments to take care of, as well as a little bit of gaming backlog and TV show watching to do. That's just very conductive to my mental well-being, considering the trifling times that we live in with the current pandemic. So I hope that a good chunk of you, whoever's watching this on playback or watching this on the stream thus far, is finding yourselves in good health and all that mumbo jumbo, and I'm hoping that you guys are doing very well. So anyways, here we are going to be doing episode 3. It's funny because I keep thinking, this is going to be the short one. This is going to be the one that's going to be about an hour, maybe a little bit on the lesser side. But that's what I said about the last one. And people started jumping in here and there asking questions, particularly Darius Stone, who was, I guess, my guest star last time, that dropped on by and asked me a fair share of film school or film-related questions, and I obliged him. And that kind of inflated the episode a little bit beyond what I was expecting it to. I was expecting to go for about an hour or so, and it ended up being like an hour and 25 minutes or something. So, and I have yet to post that episode over on my YouTube channel, so I got to make a mental note to make sure that goes on through. And is my chat in the right spot? Yeah, my chat's in the right spot, just in case that starts to fill up there. So, in last week's episode, I talked about whether or not you truly needed film school. And, I kind of gave a little bit of I don't want to say cop-out answer, but just a substantial answer that was very case-by-case oriented, where it just really depends on where you land as far as knowledge and networking and, what kind of value you get out of the film school. Because in the day and age that we live in, most of that information that would generally be only found in film school can be now found online with seminars, master classes, YouTube videos, photos that are now published digitally as opposed to having to go to a library. It's all out there. But what you won't get out of the internet that can hardly be replicated in any other form factor is going to be that networking. It's going to be that human interaction. Now, granted, that's a little tough to do these days with the current coronavirus situation. But that's actually that's actually the element that I wanted to segue with over to this episode, which is all about social networking, all about making those contacts and knowing who's who once you get into film school. So let's say we tackle a scenario where you do in fact decide to enroll in film school. What's the preliminary steps? What's the steps that I took beginning right from step 1 going into film school? So let's say that we're using my narrative here. And, with me, it was Columbia College, Hollywood in Tarzana, and in Tarzana, California. So getting out of my community college, all of my A through G requirements were already met. They were, I graduated with an associate's degree. I had a strong GPA. I think it was at a 3.5. About a 3.5 GPA. So fairly well. And I was able to transfer those credits into Columbia College after filling out all of the paperwork. And in the midst of getting my paperwork cleared, there was also something called an open house / orientation, which is this particular day that the school schedules for itself to be like, this is the day that you're going to come to the campus, you're going to get a visitor badge, and I kind of covered this a little bit on the last episode, where you come to the campus and you have a tour guide guiding you and a handful of other people that are prospects for the school or that are thinking about doing the school, saying, these are the rooms, this is where we do the editing, this is where people do the shooting, this is where we do the script writing, this is da 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 da, and of course sprinkled amongst the campus are a bunch of novelty things to kind of keep the ambience very film centric, while at the same time also very appealing for people who want to come to the school, whether it be with posters of movies, and then next to those posters would be the names of the people that graduated from that school that ended up working on that film. I think the most prolific one, let me look up his name, because it's a very foreign name, it's a very European name, so let me do a little bit of research here. It's funny because I immediately know which film he did, or a handful of films that he did, but I can always never bolt down his name. His name is Jamais. I think he's French. Oh no, he's Spanish. So I think this is pronounced Jamais or Jaume. I'm gonna say Jaume. Jaume Collet Serra, or Jaume Collet Serra. He was born in Barcelona, Spain, which is the capital of Spain. I mean, I know it's officially probably not the capital of Spain, but it's like, when you think of Spain, Barcelona, and then there's probably no other city that you can probably remember except Barcelona. Barcelona to Spain, it's like Paris to France. So yeah, he was born in Barcelona, and he traveled over here to become a filmmaker. He graduated from Columbia College with an emphasis on directing. This guy went on to direct films such as The Shallows, the movie with the sharks with Blake Lively, and then he did Orphan, which a lot of people liked. It's a horror film that girl Orphan, and then he did almost like a trilogy of action films with Liam Neeson. From hold on, let me bring up the director credits. He did Nonstop, Run All Night, and The Commuter, and Unknown. So it's actually 4 films. He did 4 films with Liam Neeson. Yeah, some may argue that maybe they're the same film, only with different character names and little aesthetics, but otherwise. And he also did the House of Wax reboot, which I think that was probably the only movie that didn't fare very well. But it was his first film. You gotta make a movie somehow to get your name out there. But afterwards, he was able to kind of focus and refine where the direction that he wanted to go with when it came to his list of films there. And he is a graduate from the film school that I went to, so trust me, when you walk through some of the hallways, you'll see posters for Nonstop and Unknown with his name next to them. So little things like that, and I don't think they're going to be just exclusive to Columbia. I think you're also going to find it in the New York Film School. You're going to find it in the Los Angeles Film School, Full Sail, Cal State. I want to say Cal State Fullerton or Cal State. One of the big Cal States has a film degree division. Like, it's not just a film degree. It's not just like 1 or 2 classes. Like a whole kind of branch for it. But with various film schools, they gotta show what they're capable of. So you're gonna find that a little bit in the campuses during the tour, during the open house. They're gonna have snacks on the tables. They're gonna have a Q&A section. They're gonna have most film schools are gonna have a built-in theater for screenings and for various classes that require that kind of setting. And often the orientation and the open house is going to have at least one segment during the day where you're going to be in that room for some kind of Q&A session or some kind of demo reel, something like that, to just kind of get you going, kind of get the creative juices flowing, while at the same time making it enticing to go to that school. It's just a thing that, from a business standpoint, every school is practically going to have to do. It's ultimately, it ends up falling onto you. Which school you feel most comfortable with, and you end up selecting. For me, it was Columbia College. So I did this open house. We went through the soundstage. We went through all the different things from a physical standpoint, to the campus. And then finally, it was on orientation day, which was this. It was on a separate day of the tour, but it was before that preceding quarter was going to start. So for me, I think it was a spring quarter. Yeah, of course, it's going to depend on which one you end up going with in terms of where you are in the years. So if you waited a little while from high school or from community college, whichever quarter you decide to go with, it's up to you. With me, it was the spring, and it was a day about 2 or 3 weeks prior to the quarter starting that I had an orientation where it was more so about the paperwork. It was more so about sitting down with a guidance counselor and being like, hey, this is what I want to do, and developing some kind of roadmap about which classes to first take in the middle, take at the end, and where we can kind of fall at the very end of this whole sort of journey. And so that's actually what I have here in my document to kind of break down, where you're gonna land on in terms of tiers and emphasis and what to expect with your curriculum. So for me, right off the top, I told him that I wanted to be a director with a little bit of screenwriting kind of sprinkled in there. So what they end up breaking it down to is, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 sort of divisions of where classes, and it basically, they can call it tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. You can also interpret it as a way of saying beginner, intermediate, professional, yada yada. Whatever kind of nomenclature you really want to use. With tier 1, it's basically all of the basics. Tier 1 is going to be filled with all the classes that virtually every single student needs to take, regardless of which emphasis you want to do, regardless of which position in the film industry you want to be. You have to take these tier 1 classes, and they're going to be varying almost every department of what makes up filmmaking. So there's going to be some that are there's 2 classes in particular that try to take all the fundamentals and kind of mash them into one. And some aspects I liked, and then there's others where I'm like, this is so, at least for me, from a subjective standpoint, I just never was able to stand for some reason. I don't know. I can't pinpoint it to a science, but there was just something that I could not stand about this element. I'll get to it in a second. I'm kind of jumping forward here. There's 2 classes that for sure everybody has to take, and then from there it's a little emphasis centric. So, for example, with me directing, there was a script analysis class. That was a directing 1 class, directing 1 where you have to direct a short film, but the short film is only about 5 minutes, and you have to do it from a very basic standpoint. They don't let you get out of the campus. You have to shoot it on campus. They give you, for lack of a better term, they give you the least sought after equipment, to put it nicely. I'll let you interpret that a little bit, when it comes to the condition of the equipment. That's what directing 1 is. But the 2 classes that I really want to focus on is visual design and principles of production. Before even taking directing, in fact, I'm jumping even a little bit more ahead, because directing 1 and script analysis are found a little bit more in tier 2. With tier 1, you're finding more so in the fundamentals. So motion picture history, like you'll have certain teachers focusing on a specific director or a specific genre, but I think there's one version of motion picture history that just tries to take everything and kind of condense it into an 11-week course. And it is going to feel a little fast, because they're going to start from the 1920s, but they're probably only going to focus on one movie from the 1920s and then one from the 30s, maybe a couple of clips from the 40s, and then speed through the 50s. So you're going to have to bear with it. But visual design and principles of production is really what it boils down to. Because the others might cycle a little bit, but the 2 that stayed consistent were those 2, visual design and principles of production. And visual design is pretty much a class that tries to break down the fundamentals of what it's like to look at film from... It's funny, because on surface value, the class is called visual design, but it's also teaching you how to not think so visually, if that makes any sense. So basically, I know that was a very weird way to put it, but let's say that you have a particular shot that looks like a simple shot, but you'll have a teacher, again, the teachers will cycle through, saying, look at the way that they put the bars of a door in the foreground, and you have the character. It's supposed to, show how this character is trapped in the middle of the frame. So he's trapped in the story. He doesn't know where to go. again, it depends on the person, but some people might find this insightful, others might find it a little bit pretentious, but it's just a way to kind of, the better teachers, at least for me, will make sure that however it is that you feel about certain shots will be from a subjective standpoint and will never criticize you on how you feel about a shot, just as long as you feel something. Most of the good teachers that I've had, not just for this visual design class, but virtually for any class, the best ones are the ones that don't grade you on what you say, just as long as you say something. If you say something you don't, you pass or you fail. Whatever it is that you say, as long as it's, of course, within, as long as it's not defamatory or inappropriate or anything like that. But if it's some kind of opinion, some kind of emotion, they'll be cool with it. That's not to say that you may or may not, just like with any regular school, period, outside of film school, you might encounter a teacher that's not exactly following this protocol. I had one teacher who, he didn't put it very, he didn't lay it on thick, but I had to resort to talking to some of my peers, some of my colleagues, to be like, are you getting the feeling that I'm getting? And they would confirm for me, saying, yeah, he doesn't like our opinion, so he's grading us on that. And first and foremost, that is complete bullshit and against the rules. So please speak out. Don't stay too quiet. Speak out if a teacher is grading you on your opinions because they don't like your opinion. They're giving you like a F or a D. Speak out, because that's actually rule number one about taking a class or instructing a class at a film school or some kind of art school, period. Not just film, but like, painting, sculpting, whatever. However that teacher may feel, they can feel. They have to be as objective and as technical as possible. And I did have at least one teacher for sure. Maybe another one or two, but one for sure. And that's actually quite amazing considering how many teachers I went through. One for sure that was grading because he didn't like how we felt about something, and I went over to my friends in that class, and they were like, yeah, we're getting the same vibe. And we put it, I don't it's funny because that teacher, the last quarter that I was there, that I was actually on campus before Corona hit, he was still walking the campus. So I'm like, all right, he didn't let go, but I don't know if they gave him a slap on the wrist or something. I don't know, but I don't, I can't speak for every single school, but the school that I went to, and I'm assuming that other schools have this sort of thing too. At the end of every quarter, they send out these surveys that are supposed to be anonymous for you to fill out and be like, okay, this is what I liked about the class, this is what needs improvement, this is how I felt about the teacher, this is how I felt about the experience. Trust me, I filled out that survey after that quarter with that teacher, so I made it known that that's how I felt, and I'm pretty certain that that's how an awful lot of other students felt also when that happened. So anyways, before I got mildly sidetracked here, those are some of the classes that you, or some of the expectations to kind of have. So keep your guard up, especially going into something in like visual design where things could be interpreted so differently and subjectively. But ultimately, that's what visual design is: to how to look at a shot or a sequence or a take or a cut, and not just look at it as that shot or that cut. And almost visual design is almost like teaching you a whole nother language, that you weren't accustomed to speaking before, especially if and. This is going to sound a little harsh, but if visual design is not able to teach you a new outlook on something by the end of it, then I'm just saying that the likelihood of you not gelling with the medium of film, or at least the career you were thinking about in film, may need some reevaluation. I know that sounds harsh, but even me, who I thought I was able to speak fluent film by my high school days, when I was telling some of my friends or even my family members, saying, oh, this is how they shot this and that, going into visual design and then coming out of the other end with certain outlooks where I was like, well, I didn't know that, and admitting to it, that was huge value from that class. And then the second class is principles of production, and what basically visual design was taking the fundamentals of how to look at film. Principles of production is like how to take the fundamentals of creating film. This is the one where regardless of what you're planning on doing, you have to fill in all of the key positions on the set of a film. So when you enroll in a class that's called Principles of Production or Fundamentals of Production, regardless of whether you go to the school that I went to or any other version of film school, they have at least one class that could be called Principles of Production or whatever. For me, it was called POP, Principles of Production. And it's basically like a directing class, but it's not just for directors. You have to do everything. So depending on how, what the length of the quarter is, or if you go by semester or trimester, whatever, they map it out within those weeks to be like, okay, these first 2 weeks you're going to direct a short film. This person's going to write it. This person's going to do the sound. This person's going to do the lighting. This person's going to do the camera. And the teacher, I remember the teacher on this one, and he was on set almost every time to guide us and to kind of teach us terminology and the steps and what to say, when someone has to cut the shot, say cut, or whenever someone has to make sure that the microphone is recording on the boom mic, say sound speeding, little, arbitrary stuff like that to make sure that everyone's on the same page so that it's second nature by the time you get on set, or by the time you get on set by the second quarter or the third quarter, and you start to get into those tier 2 classes with directing 1, directing 2, whatever the hell. That's what Principles of Production does. And then after like 2 weeks, you cycle through. So whoever was directing now has to do writing. Whoever was doing writing now has to do sound, so on and so forth. And that's pretty much what Principles of Production ends up being. And those are the two key classes for sure that will prop up on that tier 1. The others will cycle through, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm having a tough time kind of remembering those other tier 1 classes, but those are the two that always stick almost every time that I'm registering for classes and they show up on that ballot. Hey, Snake Sabers, how's it going? Welcome to the stream. You forgot your stream today? You gotta keep tabs on that schedule, man. I have the schedule posted up on my page. Every Thursday, 7:30, Film Student School, coming to you. So that's tier 1. Tier 2, tier 2 is where it definitely becomes a bit flexible depending on the person. This is where it does become a little bit more centric on what you're aiming to do, whether you want to be a sound person, you want to be a cinematographer, this is where it starts to get a bit more personalized. So I can't speak for whoever's watching this to be like, this is what you expect. I can just say that for me, who was a directing emphasis, and I told them head on, like, I want to be a director, I want to be a directing emphasis, and they gave me a roadmap of what I should take. And of course, every class is going to have their prerequisites, so there's going to be certain classes that you have to take before taking the other ones. It was in my tier 2 section where that motion picture history class then turned into motion picture history for Scorsese, motion picture history for Spielberg, motion picture history for science fiction, horror, and was becoming much more centric depending on where your tastes lie. And then that's where we started to take more screenwriting classes, and then when it started to get a little bit more fun with the screenwriting, because you had your screenwriting 1 to teach you the fundamentals of screenwriting. But then in tier 2, you get into screenwriting 2, where they get more emphatic on characters, where it's like, okay, you know how to write a script. Now let's write another script, but this time it has to be very character driven. So, sure, you're going to type in your actions, characters need to do action, they're based on their actions, but how to make sure that those actions reflect on the character and you're keeping the character cohesive, that it's all very character focused, to making sure that you're doing something with this person to feel alive, and it's not just some talking head walking across the screen. Because ultimately, in this class is it was very important to me, because it was thankfully by this point that I realized that I can't remember which ones specifically, and without proper nourishment right now, I'm not going to be able to remember at a 100% energy rate. But I remember that at that point, I did become self aware that you can make a film with a story that people may have seen time and time again. I'm recently been watching some more of Ron Howard's masterclass, and even he said that you know, as long as you have some fresh element, some kind of fresh, kind of layer added to your film that can maybe be carried by the characters, then that's where you can really excel as a screenwriter. Because now, let's face it, so many of stories are rehashes or reinterpretations or reinventions of stories that we have already gotten in the 60s and the 50s and the 70s. But because the filmmaker, whether it be the director or the writer, was able to take a fresh new element or coat of paint and apply it to this tried and true formula of a story, then it works. And sometimes your characters are that fresh element. Characters that we may have not seen before go through this story that we have seen before. Actually, one of my treatments that I'm kind of working on right now, it's not a full-on script, but it's like a treatment breaking down Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 of, that will hopefully serve as a template to write the full feature-length script later on, is based on, it's a comedy on a group of friends doing something kind of crazy on this one night. Sounds very arbitrary, sounds very typical, right? It sounds like something from a John Hughes film back in the 80s, but there's a particular event that it's circled around that I'm like, is it just me, or I haven't seen a film tackle this? I mean, I'm actually surprised that nobody has made a film about this, that I can think of at least. And I've went ahead and I've searched it up on IMDb and Wikipedia and such, and I haven't found anything based around a movie based around this event. So I'm like, shit, I better get started on that script soon before somebody beats me to it. Six Sabers, how you doing? Hungry. I'm running on fumes here to do the stream, but I wanted to keep to the schedule, so here I am. But otherwise, I'm doing very well. I'm a little tired from work. Just got home from work about an hour and a half ago, but doing very well. Very well. Tripped over my words there. So yeah, tier 2 is definitely going to become much more molded on the individual. So, for me, it was those script writing classes that were then kind of focusing on different elements, and those motion picture history classes. Unfortunately, there were some classes that were required for, and this is where things started to get a little bit weird for me. And it could get, I'm not saying that it's probably an exclusive thing to my film school. Chances are some of the more prolific ones like Los Angeles Film School is probably going to have the same kind of ordeal happening, where certain classes are prerequisites to bigger classes later on that are definitely not going to be your cup of tea. For me, it was the sound classes. There were some sound design classes that I needed to take for my tier 3 classes, which were directing 1 and 2. Directing 1 and 2 were like principles of production, but this is the one where for sure they were going to give you the better equipment. They will give you permission to use certain things, whether it be on sets, pre-built sets on campus, or sets that you need to construct for yourself in the soundstage, which requires labor work, or if you need to go on location and give you the permits. This is where things start to become a little bit more legit in directing 1 and 2. But before you go there, you need to learn how to record rain falling. Why? Because you need to learn and understand how the fundamentals of that we got. So this is where it does get a little trite, and your passion for the position that you're going for is truly going to get tested, because I know for a fucking fact, pardon my French, it was tested for me with some classes, which for me was some of the sound design stuff, and it wasn't very much elective wise, because trust me, I would have realized I wouldn't have taken the class if it was an elective. And that's the thing, is that as your journey progresses, you're going to have electives of classes that you don't have to take, but they can very, very well be beneficial for you. One that I took that was definitely not required, but I'm like, this is very valuable knowledge, because you can get, stories told to you by some of the teachers that now could be pressed for time with the seminars and the stuff that you're getting online. One class in particular was called The Director Prepares. And I'm like, holy shit, I never really thought about the phase of a director, because when you think of a director, oh god, my webcam. Oh my god, give me a second, guys. Give me a second. I literally saw that happen. I saw the light turn off on my thing. Hold on. I saw that happen as it, and we're back. There we go. Yeah, as soon as I'm gonna have to keep tabs on when we're gonna get better stock at work for webcams, because right now we are clearly, yeah, Snicks. I literally just said that right now. I just want to make sure that the motion on the webcam looks good. You know what? Screw it. Whatever. I'll leave it alone. But yeah, the plug on my webcam is finicky. I touch it and it could literally, it'll literally die. I honestly think I need a new webcam, and the USB cable is attached. It's sewed into the webcam, so if that goes out, then the whole thing is pretty much screwed. So I would probably have to buy a new webcam one of these days. Yeah. And the bummer is that right now webcams are in such short supply with what's going on, because people need them for school, for work, conferencing, things like that. So it is what it is. So I'll have to keep tabs on it. If I don't touch it, it's fine. But if I nudge the USB plug over here, then that happens. So yeah, I needed to take the sound class to then get into those other classes I really wanted to take. And that's gonna happen. There's gonna be a bump in the road of this curriculum that you have to follow. Whether you want to be a screenwriter, cinematographer, there's gonna be those classes you're gonna have to take that you don't want to take, but you have to because for some reason the school makes it a thing. And who knows? Maybe by this point they might have reorganized their curriculum. They might have restructured, and maybe now it's not a prerequisite. So some research might be needed on your part to be like, okay, what are the prerequisites that you're going to need for your particular emphasis? But just be prepared for that to happen. So that was the bulk of my tier 2. And again, there were electives. The one elective, as I was mentioning, was the director prepares, which was focusing on the preparatory phase for a director. So, when you think of directors, you think of the guy on set saying action cut, telling the actors what to do, how to feel, where to put the camera, such and such. What about the moments leading up to that? What about the, what goes on through the director's head when they're reading the script, when they're going location scouting, getting a feel for the space, casting, being mentally prepared, not just, for focus on the story, but just to make sure that you're not going to go crazy. And that's ultimately what the teacher kind of described when I took this class. And this was an elective. I didn't have to, but I took it. So that's also another little piece of advice that I want to kind of throw out there, is to not be afraid to take certain electives, because even if it's not shown to be required on your curriculum for like an emphasis or something like that, don't be afraid to take it. Don't be afraid to take at least 1/4 out of your entire kind of roadmap, like I said, to be like, okay, on this quarter I'm gonna take it easy, I'm gonna take these classes that are not required. So yeah, sure, if you fail, that might impact your GPA, possibly your financial aid if you're taking that out like I was, but at least know that the end goal cannot be affected by this, but at least use this as a way to better yourself as from a person's standpoint, not from an educational standpoint, but more so from like hey, this can maybe make the difference between you just being an okay director versus a great director, an okay screenwriter versus a great screenwriter. So that's a little piece of advice to really kind of take in stride from what I've learned. And then we start to kind of metamorphosis into tier 3. Tier 3 is where, again, stuff starts to get a bit more and more legit. So we're talking directing 1 and 2, screenwriting 1 and 2, or screenwriters symposium, something like that, where, the shit really starts to get legit, where, the assignments are going to get bigger, they're going to get more challenging, but you're going to start to be talked to not like a student, but rather like a professional. They're going to almost expect professionalism. But thankfully, because at this point, at least for me, I kind of had a sense of how, I don't want to say a sense of how the industry worked, because I'm going to tell you right now, I haven't had and this is one regret that I've had within the past couple months, ever since this pandemic broke out, because now it's non-existent. But internships. I haven't interned on location for like a set, for like a office, for some kind of corporate office, for some kind of studio or some kind of firm, some kind of outlet that has a website or a YouTube page or something like that. And that's something to definitely look into as you take these classes, so that when you start to get in your tier 3 stuff, you kind of have a sense of professionalism. You kind of have a sense of how the industry works. I knew how the school system worked, so I was kind of tailoring myself for that. What I'm referring to is that in tier 3 is where you start to get a bit more official about some of the classes you're taking. So, for example, directing 2, you have to write and direct your own material. There's going to be a lot less hand holding, so you have to go out and get your permits yourself. You have to go and do your casting yourself. You got to, so many things you have to sort out for yourself. And then that kind of also transforms into something called production workshop, which is divided in, that in and of itself is divided into 3 segments: PW, production workshop 1, PW2, PW3, which breaks down the pre-production, production, and post-production phase of one short film that you're making. For me, it would be a short film, as a director. For screenwriters, it's writing a feature film, a whole like 90 to 120 page script, and just keep working on it. For producers, it's producing a TV show or a feature or something like that. It varies person. And your school, whichever school you go with, might have a few more enlightened details on that. But for me, it was directing a short film. And PW1, PW1 was going to be pre-production. You write it, you cast it, you do your locations, you cross all your T's and dot all your I's. And then PW2 is all about that shooting and reshooting. Whether you have to do some pickups, whether you have to do, whether somebody has to back out, and you have to recast and shoot that. This is all broken down within, I want to say 2 to 3 month structure, because we go by quarters. Quarters are about 11 weeks. You're looking at about 3 months. And then PW3 for me would have been the post-production, which is the editing, the scoring, music scoring, color correction, making sure that this is as close to the vision that you were gonna get from the very beginning. So, shit gets real in tier 3. And of course, it could be different for everybody. That was for me for directing. Producers have a different feel. They could go and produce a feature film or a TV show of some kind, or a web show, that sort of thing. But whatever you do in tier 3, is something that you got to be prepared for, to actually put in your resume for when you go out for more internships and then potential jobs. Even if you start off as a small job. And you're going to have, I don't want to get into too much of the weeds for that, because that's more so of a guidance counselor sort of thing, and I don't want to, put out the guidance counselor secrets out there, but also because it'll just end up kind of bloating the episode here. But that's also another regret. I'm also trying to disclose as many regrets here on camera as much as possible, to make sure that whoever watches this doesn't go through them as well. Because that's my advice, is to not do these things that, by the way, thank you for the compliment, Snakes, on the tie. This is a brand new one. Although I feel this feels more like a job interview sort of tie rather than the black one, but I digress. But what I was gonna say is that don't be afraid to go out with for those internships. Don't go afraid to just, God, how do I word it here? This frame rate's bothering me. Hold on. Okay, yeah, now the frame rate's good. All right, cool. All right, frame rate's good now. Yeah, the internships. And then definitely the networking. Don't be afraid to go out for these things. For the electives, for the internships, so you can get that hands-on experience. Of course, one thing that I kept referring to as my main hurdle for not going out for these internships was the travel distance. Of course, it helps to be a little bit closer to the action. So for me, I was going to film school in LA, but I would live in a town here that's about an hour and a half away. An hour and a half without traffic, close to about 2 hours with traffic. I would only go once a week, of course, but that definitely put a hindrance on a little bit of those internships because what if they, God willing, they say, yeah, we want to do an internship with you. Oh, you live in so and so, you have to commute? Okay, well, we'll get you a call back. And they never talk to you again. Because who's to say that you're going to be who's to say that you're going to be late almost every single time because you were stuck in traffic? They're going to go with the guy or girl who lives probably a couple blocks from Sunset. So, the location's humongously important. Location is ultimately important. Now, of course, I know that it's tough to afford to live in LA. Well, it probably really isn't right now with what's going on. And I know that that's probably on hold for an awful lot of people. I understand. Just know that when you're definitely ready to take that leap over to film school, definitely look at the options for either some kind of student housing or bunkering with someone. Definitely sharing the rent is going to be a humongous help because, being able to commute, 20 minutes or be on call for someone who maybe called out for an internship that they were planning on doing and then they ended up going with you, then you could be at the ready. I just wasn't at the ready. And this also was a reason / excuse that I would use for not networking to my fullest capacity, which is ultimately what the title of this third episode is all about, which is the network. The network that you need to create with whoever you're sitting with in class, when we get back to class. Because whoever that person you're talking to is might end up being your longtime producer, who's gonna say, "Hey, that script you gave me, that sounds like a legit film. Let's go ahead and make it." 20 years from now, you guys are probably winning Oscars. Who knows? That's how things happen. Don't be afraid to talk to people. I made the terrible, terrible mistake of not talking to enough people out there. I did not talk enough. I was very introverted. I only talked when I was asked upon, basically. So, when we had discussions about a film or a script or just something that we needed to break down, I would go off. But outside of that, I really wouldn't do much. And again, I'm paying kind of the price now because, as I mentioned either in the last episode or the episode before that, I now see some of my colleagues either on Instagram or Facebook or whatever posting stories about memories they had with the people that they graduated from film school or they went to classes with on film school, working on sets or even not working on sets or working on a film or working on a project. They would just go out and have fun and they became best friends. And I don't have that. I don't have many friends, period. When it really comes down to it. And, but looking at it from a much more professional objective, relating it over to film school, I don't have that many people to be like, say, for example, I have a script sitting that I want somebody to look at. I think I have one or two people, one person for sure, maybe a second, on Facebook that I can message and be like, "Hey, I got the script. You want to look at it?" And they'll be like, "Sure." What if they never have time? What if they got caught up with something? Family emergency or film-related emergency. There it goes. The net is as small as you can. The net is as small as you can make it, or the net is dependent on just how wide you cast it upon the people that you talk to. So for me, one person that I can definitely forward a script to. There's probably several other people that go to my school that probably have dozens that just talk to a lot of people on a daily basis. So definitely don't be afraid to take the internships for the experience, and don't be afraid to talk to people to create that social network. Now, of course, I know, very self-aware that that's very difficult to do right now with the times that we're living in and in the situation that we find ourselves in. Frankly, though, that's not exactly stopping you from pressing the send button over here on Facebook for add a friend, send a message. In fact, I should probably take my own advice and see if maybe the next time I go on Facebook, it recommends me someone to add that's from Colombia. And I'll be like, oh, hey, add friend. I don't have to get too personal, too weird with it. But just be like, hey, I go to film school too. Let's network. And honestly, I think right now is probably the best way to go about that method because, most of these people will be logical, will be reasonable. They'll be like, yeah, we can't be exactly social in person. Fuck it, let's do it. So the social network is tremendously, tremendously important. It's ultimately the one thing from film school that can definitely not be replicated with that I just mentioned time and time again at the beginning of this episode and on episode 1, or actually in the last episode where I was addressing the question whether or not you need film school or should you go to film school. And if you are one of the people that can definitely find the right amount of resources on the internet, whether it be with the seminars, the classes, whatever, you name it, the social network will then be the deciding factor as to whether or not you go. And for me, I think the social network, social interacting, networking, creating that web of contacts that you can definitely reach out to if you need a cinematographer. That person from a couple quarters back that wanted to be a cinematographer, and you noticed on their Facebook or on their LinkedIn page. LinkedIn actually, it's not a meme. It's not a running joke anymore. It's not that one website mentioned in Deadpool 2. It's actually a thing that could be used to create those networking contacts for that person that said they want to be a cinematographer. You check out their page, and it turns out they have a demo reel. You check out the demo reel on YouTube, something that you like, you reach out to them and be like, hey, you remember me? Or hey, we talked last month about this. Oh, yeah. Boom. Sparks fly. Do not make the same mistake that I made of not creating that network, or at least starting to create that network a little too late, because this last quarter where I was on campus, I actually started to talk a little bit more outside of being asked for, opinions and outputs on subjects and elements and things. When class ended, I would sometimes be going to that person and be like, hey, I like this, I like what you did there with the thing, and then COVID-19 hit, and it's a very sad outcome that we ended up falling upon with that. So, and of course that kind of nulls a little bit of the internships. Of course, there's going to be specific internships that you can maybe do from home, especially when they're very web focused, when they're very internet focused. So I know that there's an avenue for that, but it's not going to be the same way as it was before. So when the world starts spinning again as it was before, and jump at the chance. Definitely jump at the chance, because again, I can't reiterate enough times, don't make the same mistake that I did. And definitely look at options for staying close to the action, moving to LA, moving to New York if you're in the eastern side of things, because that's definitely where I know that with Los Angeles it's more on-foot experience. You get more so of the on-foot experience. New York is more so where more of the business side of things of film that happens, but it leans more on that. But that's not to say that it shuts out shooting on set for things. I mean, various films obviously take place in New York, especially more of genre films. So you got your decent amount of shooting locations there. Philadelphia, the avenues, what were they called? The five. Like Brooklyn, Queens, the things of New York. I can't remember what they're called, but there's definitely opportunities to shoot in New York, but Los Angeles is more where I don't know. It's where Hollywood is at. It's where the landscapes are at, where the landmarks are at, and where the history. Because film didn't exactly film the actual technical creation of film. I'm not going to run through a history class here, but developing the camera and all that stuff started in the Eastern, but Hollywood as a business as we know it now was all founded here in the West. So pick your poison, so to speak, whether you want to move to LA or move to New York. at least those two epicenters is where you can definitely start a frugal film career, which regardless of what you want to be. You want to be an executive producer, cinematographer, you name it, definitely could be kickstarted there. But as far as living there, because you can go to film school either way, but living there is also something that should not be taken for granted because an awful lot of times you have to look at some of these things from a logistics standpoint. Because for me, like I said, that's one of the things that stumped me out from taking interns and flat out scared me from wanting to do some internships. And this also pains me to say there were some projects that I could have volunteered myself for and be like, hey, you need a helping hand or you need a director. And I think I had at least one or two that were legit like, yeah, you want to direct this. And then they told me where it was going to be shot at. And because I had to work or I had to do something and I had to do something that was here in my town around the time that they were shooting in Los Angeles. And I'm like, it has to be an all-day thing, but for these people, it was like an afternoon thing because they lived in the nearby area. And do not overlook or underestimate, from other side of the spectrum, the logistics of how something can work with those networks that you develop, whether it be a project, an internship, a collaboration, a script writing session, something that could be done on campus. Don't overlook it. Look at every aspect of things. If you can move to LA, do it. If you can afford it. But look at it from a strategic standpoint. I mentioned about bunkering with people before. Within my age bracket, there's no tangible way. And with in the year that we live in, taking COVID out of the scenario, I cannot live in LA by myself. Even in the shittiest shithole, I cannot live by myself. I would need to live with someone. Look at those prospects. Screen and interview people to make sure. I mean, it's a match made in heaven if whoever you move in with also wants to be in film. Yeah, it's funny because part of me, and I don't know this from experience. I'm telling you right now, I do not know this from experience. But part of me wants to say, move in with someone that wants to be in film but not in the same position as you. So don't move. If you're a screenwriter, don't move in with a screenwriter. Move in with a director or a producer or something like that. That way you can kind of get a taste for the two avenues of the filmmaking industry that are in focus here. If you're a screenwriter and you're moving with another screenwriter, I think that could create a clash because you're going to have that screenwriter criticizing your work often or seeping into your head and maybe being like, oh, he or she was right or what are they talking about with it? I feel like it becomes a little parasitic. At least that's my theory. Again, I don't know from first-hand experience, but to each their own. Six Sabers asking a question here. Is it LA that has more of a chance of being a director or something that involves with film industry? Yeah, because I think with LA, there's just something about, I guess there's something a bit more, I almost want to say relaxing or tangible about being able to have an internship. And then, I'm not saying it's like it really is a 1 in a million chance, but there is that chance that you could be, an intern just making photocopies of something, and then someone invites you on the set of something, and it's inviting you on the set that you meet this producer, and you and this producer talk about film. This producer picks up on the way you talk about film that's different from anyone else's, and then all they have to do is just ask that question. Are you writing something? Or what are you doing right now? And one thing that I learned from my teachers, and I kind of want to talk about this a little bit more in depth on another future episode, but one thing that my teacher, some of my most recent teachers in production workshop, in directing too, in those tier 3 classes would often really, really reiterate is that if you ever find yourself in that position where you're talking with a producer and they ask you, what are you working on? always say that you're working on something, and always go into a specific of what you're working on. So don't say that you're thinking about writing something. Don't say you're thinking about producing or directing something or shooting something or creating something. Always say, oh yeah, like for example, I haven't actually started writing that comedy. I'm doing the treatment. But if somebody asks me, I'm writing a comedy. I'm a screenwriter. I'm writing a comedy about this group of friends that do this thing on this one night. I don't want to mention the specifics here because I just want to kind of keep it close to the test. All right, Snicks. See ya. Take care. Have a good night. But I'm even though I haven't written a single actual word of the script, I'm gonna be like, yeah, I'm a screenwriter. I'm writing this film because it sounds, well, first of all, it definitely sounds productive, but also, yeah, it serves as practice because it's a stereotype. Well, it's a cliche at this point, but get ready to hear no a lot with the internships, and also maybe even with the networks that you try to flourish. You might have that one person that you think you might be hitting it off from a professional standpoint, and then you offer to have them read your script, and then they might be like, I know I'm busy, with this other stuff, I don't have time to read another script. Okay. Never take it personal. Try to be as professional as possible. Never take it personal. Only if you have a history with this person can you maybe start asking, as to why, blah, blah, blah. But, like if you started off as friends and then became the professionals, but otherwise, and you got to be self-aware of when these situations arise. If my best friend from high school, we both ended up in film, and then he ended up saying, oh yeah, I'm too busy with this, then I could be like, oh, what, you don't have to, I can joke around, but like, oh, you don't have time for me, and they'll be like, yeah, I have to do this thing there, but tell me what, hit up this person right here, I hear he or she is free, blah, blah. Okay, cool, boom, network thread line. And I'm, even if you're going to a film school and it's not exactly the industry, still do it. Still do it, because whatever you concoct in that film school can then become the industry. Who's to say that it can't? Right? Let me look at my bullet points here and see if I... Yeah. There was one section here, but to be honest, I think this, now looking at it, I think this is something that I would want to save for episode 4, when it really gets to who is who. So let's say that you are networking, you are trying to, appease to those folks, and you're networking primarily to other students. You're a student, you're networking to other students, you guys are on the same playing field, but who's on the other fields? Whether it be with the faculty, with the teachers. Could some of these teachers maybe get your foot in the door? Can your financial advisors kind of break down, what you would need as far as money goes? Your guidance counselors pave you the right path. Who is who, and what part do they play during that first year, second year of film school? That's going to be on the next episode. That was actually a really good segue. Very proud of it, considering I'm really, really exhausted. It's time for me to get some grub, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode here. I'd say that's also another thing that you will learn in film school. If you haven't already, you probably already do, but don't be afraid to keep things kind of on the short side, because ultimately quality matters over the quantity. And an awful lot of teachers will definitely emphasize that, whether it comes to a pitch for a film you're trying to throw over to an executive, or a presentation, or a paper, or something like that. Sometimes you can expect these episodes to go for about an hour and a half, but I'd rather go for a very sweet, but also cohesive and very thoroughly fleshed out hour standalone episode, like you see before you're here. So with that, thank you, Snake Sabers, for providing the chat. But also to whoever's watching this on playback, whether it be over on my YouTube channel or over here where I'm streaming on twitch.tv. Every Thursday night, 7:30, a new episode of Film Student School goes up. Unless there's some kind of exception, which I will post updates over on my Discord, on my Twitter, and well, mostly on my Discord and Twitter. So if you guys want to check that out, follow me over on Twitter and also on Instagram. I have both accounts attached to at DarkSpiderDavid, all one word, no caps, DARK. Am I saying that right? DARKSPIDERDAVID, all one word, no caps. Look me up on Twitter, on Instagram. Links are also in the bio of both my YouTube page and my Twitch page, so you guys can just check out the About section, and links for those social media platforms should be on there. When it comes to my Twitter, I try to either post little mini reviews of things that I'm playing or I'm watching. I like to play games. I mostly play video games here on this Twitch channel, but I also like to take the time once a week to talk about film and film-related stuff pertaining to, telling the point of view of a film school student. Aside from that, like I said, I occasionally like to play the nice little video game. So you can definitely follow the Twitch channel if you haven't already done so. If you're watching this, like I said, on playback and you made it all the way to the end of the video here and you liked it, feel free to hit the follow button down or up there at the top. Make sure you turn on notifications so you know exactly when I go live next on your phone, on your tablet, on your computer. And also hit me up, like I said, on Twitter and Instagram at DarkSpiderDavid. At Instagram, ever so often, I like to post either my reviews, like I mentioned, attached to an image, or some kind of photo or video that I just like to take from a cinematic look. Otherwise, that is it for me. There's also a link to my Discord on my bio page or about page here on my Twitch channel or over on YouTube. You can also type in command Discord and that'll bring it up here on the chat via replay. Otherwise, that does it for me, guys. Take care. Have a blessed evening, and I'll see you guys next week with episode 4 of Film Student School. Peace.